So this is going on, and I wanted to cover this with you, Justin, since you are running for Congress as a Green. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, let me get to the headline here. The Wisconsin Supreme Court keeps the Green Party off presidential ballot and allows ballots to be mailed on time. This is from CNN. So the Wisconsin Supreme Court decided on Monday, that would be yesterday, to keep the Green Party candidate, Howie Hawkins. They don't even bother putting his name in there.
Yeah.
CNN doesn't even give him a name. To keep the Green Party candidate off the presidential ballot, ending a legal dispute that briefly threw the state's mail-in voting plans into chaos and clearing the way for clerks to mail out ballots this week as planned. We would be unable to provide meaningful relief without completely upsetting the election, the Supreme Court wrote in its 4-3 decision. Now, here's what's interesting here. The 4-3 decision was all the, quote, liberal judges and then one of the conservatives. The overall makeup of the Wisconsin Supreme Court is 4-3 with a conservative majority. The ruling of this was 3 liberal judges, all 3 liberal judges going against putting the Greens on the ballot, and then one conservative joining them for the 4-3 decision. And this is what happens. And again, here is yet another statement. In most, or at least what we're taught with the idea of the United States, is that the purpose of the court system is to uphold the law. That's it. Yet in the United States, it is used constantly as a political football, and we have accepted this as normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's legal action going on all over the country. A lot of politics is now being fought in the courts. The parties are using the courts as a political weapon instead of going out to people and, promoting their ideas and trying to win their votes and, campaigning. A lot of the parties, because they have the resources to do this, the big parties.
Kidding.
They hire large teams of lawyers and go after, any lever of power that they can push on.
Imagine just for a second, and man, we're really dreaming hard here. What if the Democratic Party spent as much effort trying to get Green Party votes as they did trying to keep them off of a ballot?
Right. So, I mean, that leads me into the issue that I like to talk about almost nonstop, which is ranked choice voting, which I know I know you're familiar with it because you've covered it on your show. And I don't think anyone should mention third parties without mentioning ranked choice voting in the same breath, because ranked choice voting is the simple solution to the spoiler effect. It gets rid of the spoiler effect. You know this. I'm sure many of your listeners know this, but a lot of people don't. And there's still a lot of fighting among progressive Democrats versus Greens that doesn't need to be happening. They don't need to have these fights, because with ranked choice voting, people could rank Green first, rank Blue second, and if the Green doesn't win, the vote goes to the Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no spoiler effect, and you haven't tipped the election. And the message from the Democrats, instead of how dare you, destroy our country by helping the Republicans, how dare you, all the voter shaming, the message becomes, hey, well, I know maybe we're not your first choice, but maybe we can be your second choice. And so it changes the whole dynamic so that the, instead of going from fighting, it goes to looking for areas of commonality and overlap.
Yeah, I mean, and actual alliances and what have you. And I agree with everything you just said. The one thing I would add to it is I genuinely have come to despise, even more than I always have, the whole notion of spoiler effect. And I understand that's like the language we're all conditioned to use. I get that. But it is so like genuflecting to the ruling class when you really think about it. Because first of all, it assumes that the Green Party isn't its own political party that has its own base and its own voters. And it just assumes that the Democrat is just entitled to those votes. Oh, if you vote for the Green, you're not a Green Party member, or you're not someone who wants the Green Party candidate. you're someone who is taking a vote from the Democrat who was owed your vote.
Yeah.
They were owed it. And so it just takes away, and it's so incredibly, at the very least, condescending to just be like, oh, well, but you Green, you're just taking votes from the Democrat, instead of like, no, a lot of those people, and even the article from CNN, which should surprise no one, points out how many votes Jill Stein got in Wisconsin versus how many votes, Trump won by in Wisconsin. They never mentioned that Hillary Clinton didn't even bother going to Wisconsin. She didn't even go there. They didn't mention that Bernie Sanders was overwhelmingly popular in Wisconsin, where she was not as much so. And they also don't mention that, a lot of those Green voters would have stayed home if their candidate wasn't on the ballot. They wouldn't have. And one thing they'll never, ever mention, if you even want to use their own logic and talk about the spoiler effect, they never mentioned the fact that Gary Johnson got a lot of votes in all these states too, more so than Jill Stein. Yep. And a lot of those people, if Gary Johnson wasn't on the ballot, they probably would have stayed home because they're libertarians. But if they would have voted for one of the two choices, they would have voted for Trump in most cases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just such nonsense, no matter which way you look at it. Even if you use their own logic, it makes no sense. And also, you have to ask yourself, what are you accusing third and marginalized parties of spoiling? What are they spoiling? They're spoiling a duopoly where both parties are owned by the same people, so they do the bidding of the donor class while telling public opinion to piss off. They're spoiling that. Gee, I would hate to see that be spoiled. It's such an awesome system. I'd hate to see that spoiled. Breaks my heart. Anyway, Justin, over to you. Sorry, I got on a tangent there.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think the reason, I mean, the term spoiler effect probably isn't the best term. And it's one I only use because people are kind of familiar with the concept, and it's a little hard to explain why ranked choice voting is better.
Yeah, no. And just to be clear, I wasn't like directing that at you. I was just adding on to what you were saying. I know that's not what you were implying.
No,
you're running as a Green yourself. I'm just.
Well, yeah, but I think, when I go out and I talk to people about ranked choice voting, I do sometimes use the term spoiler effect, and maybe I shouldn't be. Sometimes I use it because I just use it as a tool to try and help explain to people the concept of ranked choice voting and what the problems are that it gets around.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's, I would actually say it is important to kind of do that because that's how people are so preconditioned. Like when I say it, I use it in I usually say so-called spoiler effect.
Right.
Because I don't want to, if I get off on a tangent about how I think all of that is complete nonsense, because it is, I mean, that's how you kind of turn regular people off.
Yeah.
But I'm talking to a Green here, so,
Yeah, I mean, there's, have you heard of Duverger's law?
I have not.
There's this, these academics who study voting in elections and election laws and reforms and whatnot. There was some guy, Duverger, who said, if you have elections the way we have them, where you can only pick one candidate on the ballot, eventually, over time, voters will be corralled into two major viable parties. So I really see, we don't really have a two-party system in the sense of, there's no law that says we can only have two parties. The reason we only have two parties is exactly because we don't have ranked choice voting. That's the only reason. Once you have ranked choice voting, it opens things up to more than two parties. That's my view. That's why I'm such an evangelist for ranked choice voting, because I see it as the easy solution to get out of the two-party trap. Because, I mean, yes, a lot of people wouldn't vote for either the Republican or the Democrat, no matter what you tell them or how much you try to scare them against the Republican. You're not going to get them to vote for the Democrat. But a lot of people, there are, I think, a lot of people who would rank Green first and Blue second. There's a lot of people who are enticed by what the Green Party has to offer. I mean, look, I'm running on a platform of Medicare for all, which is very popular. My Democrat and Republican opponents don't support it. So if somebody wants to vote for Medicare for all, I'm the only candidate on the ballot that they can vote for to show that support.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and